What would you do if the person you trusted most betrayed you in the cruelest way imaginable? Before we begin, if you enjoy stories like this, please subscribe to this channel, Clara's Stories, and like this video. Write in the comments what country you are watching us from. I'm very curious to know. This is the story of how one woman's silent suffering turned into an act of calculated justice that no one saw coming. Enjoy listening. The beginning of the story started with a single photograph. I stood in my small kitchen, staring at the image on my daughter Thessaly's phone. My hands trembled so violently that the device nearly slipped from my grip. The photo showed my son-in-law, Noah Holloway, with another woman. But it wasn't just any woman. It was my younger sister, Vivian. They were at some upscale restaurant, his hand resting intimately on her lower back, her head tilted toward him in a way that spoke of secrets and whispered promises. The timestamp read 3 nights ago, the same night Noah had told Thessaly he was working late on a merger deal.
"Mom, please say something," Thessaly whispered from across the table. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. At 28, my daughter had built what she thought was a perfect life. A successful marketing career, a beautiful home in the suburbs, and a marriage to Noah Holloway, the golden boy from one of the city's most prominent families. I looked at my daughter, this precious person I had raised alone after her father walked out when she was 3. I had worked double shifts at the hospital, sacrificed everything to give her opportunities one never had. And now, watching her world crumble, I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. "How long have you known?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. 2 months, she admitted. I hired a private investigator. There are more photos, Mom. Hotels. Her apartment. It's been going on for over a year. A year. While Thessaly had been trying to get pregnant, attending fertility treatments alone because Noah was always too busy. While she'd been planning their 5th anniversary celebration. While she'd defended him to me every time I voiced my concerns about his family's treatment of her. The Holloways had never thought Thessaly was good enough for their son. At family gatherings, Noah's mother, Cordelia, would make pointed comments about Thessaly's unfortunate background and lack of proper breeding. His father, Senator Gerald Holloway, barely acknowledged her existence. And Noah? He never defended her. Not once. But Vivian's betrayal cut deeper. My sister, 10 years younger than me, had always been the beautiful one, the charming one. I had put her through college, helped her start her interior design business, been there for every crisis. And this was how she repaid that loyalty. "What are you going to do?" I asked Thessaly. She looked down at her hands. "I confronted him yesterday. He didn't even try to deny it. He said," her voice broke, "he said Vivian understands him in ways I never could. That she comes from a better family, has the right connections. He wants a divorce. The right connections. My sister, who had married and divorced a minor tech executive, somehow had better connections than my hard-working, educated daughter. And Vivian? The name tasted like ash in my mouth. She called me this morning. She wasn't apologetic, Mom. She said I should have known I could never really keep a man like Noah, that I was punching above my weight, and she was doing me a favor by showing me the truth. I closed my eyes. In that moment, I made a decision. Not a hot, impulsive one born of rage, but a cold, calculated one born of absolute clarity. "Pack your things," I said quietly. "You're moving back home with me." "Mom, I can't just." "Yes, you can. And you will." I looked at her directly. "Trust me, sweetheart. We're going to handle this, but not the way they expect." That night, after Thessaly fell into an exhausted sleep in her old bedroom, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that had long gone cold. The house was quiet, filled only with the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. I wasn't a vengeful person by nature. For 43 years, I had lived quietly, predictably. I worked as a nurse in the cardiac unit, came home, tended my small garden, read mystery novels before bed. I had raised my daughter with kindness and principles. Turn the other cheek, I had taught her. Be the bigger person. But sitting there in that silent kitchen, I realized that sometimes being the bigger person just means being a bigger target. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I hadn't called in years. Damaris Chin. Damaris and I had gone to nursing school together 30 years ago. While I had stayed in bedside nursing, She had gone in a different direction. She now worked as a private medical consultant for high-profile clients. But before that, she'd spent 15 years as a forensic nurse examiner, working closely with law enforcement on sensitive cases. She knew things. She knew people. And most importantly, she knew how to find information that people wanted to keep hidden. I sent her a text. Need to talk. It's important. Her response came within minutes. Coffee tomorrow. 9 a.m. You know where? I did know where. Our old haunt, a tiny cafe near the hospital where we used to study for exams, where we'd shared our dreams and fears as young women trying to make our way in the world. The next morning, I left Thessaly sleeping and drove to the cafe. Damaris was already there, sitting in our old corner booth. She looked exactly as I remembered, sharp-eyed and elegant, her silver-streaked hair cut in a precise bob. "Rhiannon," she said, using my full name as she always had. "It's been too long. What's happened?" I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I told her everything. About Noah and Vivian. About the Holloway's treatment of Thessaly. About my sister's cruel words and Noah's casual dismissal of 5 years of marriage. Damaris listened without interrupting, her face growing harder with each detail. "What do you want to happen here?" she asked when I finished. "I want the truth," I said simply. "About Noah. About his family. I want to know who they really are. Because people like that, people who treat others as disposable, they always have secrets." A slow smile spread across Damaris's face. "You know what? I've always wondered about Senator Holloway. His rise to power was remarkably smooth. Too smooth. And I have a friend who works in medical records at Mercy General, where the senator's late wife was treated before she died." I leaned forward. Noah's mother, Cordelia, was his father's second wife. The first wife, Catherine, had died of a sudden illness when Noah was 12. It was a tragic story the family rarely discussed. "What about her?" I asked. "Just rumors," Damaris said carefully. "But interesting rumors. Give me a week. I'll see what I can find." I nodded. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," she said. "If we open this door, we might not like what we find behind it. Are you sure you want to do this?" I thought of Thessaly's tear-stained face, of Vivian's sneering voice, of Noah's indifference, of years of condescension from the Holloway family. "I'm sure," I said. Meanwhile, Noah had wasted no time. By the end of the week, Thessaly received divorce papers. They were brutal in their efficiency. Noah wanted everything. The house they'd bought together, the furniture, even the car that Thessaly had paid for with her own money. His lawyers had included a clause demanding she sign a non-disclosure agreement, preventing her from speaking publicly about the marriage or its end. "He's trying to erase me," Thessaly said, her voice hollow as we sat in my living room reviewing the documents. "Like I never existed." "No," I said firmly. "He's trying to intimidate you. There's a difference." My phone buzzed. A text from Damaris. "We need to meet. Tonight. I found something." I felt my pulse quicken. "I have to go out for a bit," I told Thessaly. "Will you be okay?" She nodded, though her eyes were distant. "I'm always okay, Mom. That's the problem. I've been okay with too much for too long." Her words stayed with me as I drove to meet Damaris at her office, a sleek high-rise in the financial district. She let me in through a side entrance and led me to a conference room where files and documents were spread across the table. "Sit down," she said. "This is going to take a while." What she showed me over the next 2 hours fundamentally changed everything I thought I knew about the Holloway family. Senator Gerald Holloway's first wife, Catherine, hadn't died of a sudden illness. She'd died of arsenic poisoning. The official cause of death had been listed as a rare autoimmune disorder, but Damaris had obtained sealed medical records through her contacts. The attending physician at the time had noted several indicators consistent with heavy metal poisoning, but had been overruled by the hospital administrator. That administrator? He'd retired 6 months later with a suspiciously generous pension and had purchased a vacation home in the Bahamas shortly after. "There was never an investigation," Damaris said. "Gerald Holloway was already a rising political star. Catherine's death was tragic, yes, but convenient. She'd been threatening to leave him and take Noah with her. There were diary entries found by the estate executor, later sealed by court order." "How did you get access to sealed records?" I asked. Damaris smiled thinly. "Let's just say I've done favors for people in positions to return them." But that wasn't all. She slid another folder across to me. "Noah Holloway," she said. "Your son-in-law has been very busy. He works for his father's investment firm, correct? I nodded. He's also been embezzling from it. Small amounts at first, but it's escalated. I have a contact in financial forensics who owed me a favor. Noah has been siphoning money into offshore accounts for the past 3 years. About $2 million so far. My hands went numb. Does his father know? I don't think so. But here's where it gets interesting. She pulled out another document. The offshore account? It's in Vivian's name too. They've been planning this for a while, Rhiannon. This wasn't just an affair. They're planning to run off together once the divorce is final, taking the embezzled money with them. I sat back, trying to process it all. My sister and Noah hadn't just betrayed Thessaly emotionally. They'd been systematically planning to steal from his own family while destroying my daughter's life. There's more, Damaris said quietly. Cordelia Holloway, Noah's mother. She knows about the affair. In fact, I have emails suggesting she encouraged it. She never wanted Noah married to Thessaly. She thought your daughter was temporary. This was her way of ending the marriage and bringing in someone she considered more suitable. The cruelty of it took my breath away. What do I do with this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Damaris looked at me with something like admiration. That depends. How far are you willing to go? I drove home in a daze, Damaris's files locked in my trunk. The city lights blurred past my windows, each one a small world of people living their lives, unaware that mine had just fundamentally shifted. When I got home, I found Thessaly exactly where I'd left her, curled up on the couch with a blanket, staring at nothing. The divorce papers sat on the coffee table, mocking us with their crisp, professional efficiency. Mom, she said softly, I've been thinking. Maybe I should just sign them. Let him have everything. Start over somewhere new, somewhere far from here. I sat down beside her and took her hand. It was cold, lifeless. Is that what you want? I don't know what I want anymore, she whispered. I just know I can't fight them. The Holloways, they're too powerful. They'll destroy me. And Vivian, her voice cracked. How do I fight my own aunt? I looked at my daughter, at the defeat in her eyes, and something hardened inside me. Sweetheart, I need to tell you something. And then I need you to trust me. Over the next hour, I showed her everything Damaris had found. I watched her face change as she read through the documents, saw the evidence of the embezzlement, learned about Catherine Holloway's suspicious death, discovered her aunt and husband's long-term planning. When she finished, she looked up at me with eyes that were no longer defeated. They were clear, focused, angry. They were never going to let me be part of that family, she said. This was always the plan. Yes, I confirmed. But they made a mistake. They underestimated us. They thought we were nothing, that we'd just disappear quietly. What are we going to do? I smiled, though it felt strange on my face, cold and unfamiliar. We're going to give them exactly what they want. Almost. The next morning, I called Noah's lawyer and informed them that Thessaly would sign the divorce papers, but she needed 1 week to arrange her affairs and move out of the house completely. They agreed immediately, probably thrilled at how easily we were capitulating. Then I made another call, this one to someone I'd hoped never to contact, my ex-husband, Thessaly's father, Booker Hayes. Booker had walked out on us 25 years ago, choosing his freedom over his family. But he'd gone on to become something I never expected, a federal prosecutor specializing in white-collar crime. We'd had no contact in years, but I knew he lived in Boston now, married to his third wife, living a life completely separate from the one he'd abandoned. The phone rang 4 times before he answered. Hello. Booker, it's Rhiannon. Silence. Then cautiously, Rhiannon. This is unexpected. I need your help, I said bluntly. Not for me. For Thessaly. Another pause. Is she all right? No, she's not. And I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. I laid out everything. The affair, the embezzlement, the suspicious death of Catherine Holloway. I sent him copies of all of Damaris's files through encrypted email while we spoke. When I finished, the silence stretched so long I thought he might have hung up. Dad, it was Thessaly. She'd taken the phone from my hand, tears streaming down her face. Are you there? Baby girl. His voice was thick, choked. I'm here. I'm so sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry. Can you help us? Yes, he said without hesitation. Yes. I can't prosecute this directly, conflict of interest, but I know people. I know exactly who needs to see this. But Thessaly, listen to me. If we do this, if we really do this, there's no going back. The Holloways will come after you with everything they have. Let them. Thessaly said, and I heard steel in her voice I'd never heard before. I'm done being afraid of them. 3 days later, I received a phone call from an unknown number. When I answered, a smooth, cultured voice purred through the speaker. Rhiannon Fletcher? This is Cordelia Holloway. I think it's time we had a conversation, woman to woman. My grip tightened on the phone. What do you want, Mrs. Holloway? I want to meet you for lunch tomorrow. 1 o'clock at Le Bernardin. Just the two of us. I think we have much to discuss regarding our children's situation. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, but I forced my voice to remain calm. Fine. I'll be there. Wonderful. Oh, and Rhiannon? Come alone. This conversation requires privacy. She hung up before I could respond. Damaris, when I told her about the lunch invitation, immediately shook her head. It's a trap. She's going to try to intimidate you, maybe offer you money to make Thessaly go away quietly. I know, I said. That's why I'm going. Let her think she has the upper hand. Rhiannon, I need to look her in the eye, I said. I need to see what kind of person encourages their son to betray his wife, who possibly helped her husband murder his first wife. The next day, I dressed carefully. Nothing too expensive, nothing that would make Cordelia think I was trying to compete with her world. A simple navy dress, minimal jewelry, my hair pulled back in a neat bun. I looked exactly like what I was, a working nurse, a single mother, someone the Holloways would consider beneath them. Le Bernardin was everything I expected. Elegant, hushed, filled with people who thought their money made them better than everyone else. Cordelia was already seated at a corner table, wearing a cream Chanel suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. She didn't stand when I approached, merely gestured to the seat across from her with a perfectly manicured hand. Rhiannon, thank you for coming. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Mrs. Holloway, please call me Cordelia. After all, we're practically family. The way she said family made it sound like a disease. A waiter appeared, and Cordelia ordered for both of us without asking what I wanted. I let her. I wanted to see what she would do, how far her arrogance would take her. I'll get straight to the point, she said once the waiter left. Your daughter's marriage to my son was a mistake. You know it, I know it. These things happen. Young people make impulsive decisions. I said nothing, just watched her. Noah has agreed to be quite generous in the settlement, despite having no legal obligation to give Thessaly anything. The prenuptial agreement was very clear. There was no prenuptial agreement, I said quietly. Cordelia's smile sharpened. Are you sure about that? Because I have a document, signed by Thessaly 5 years ago, that says otherwise. My blood ran cold. That's impossible. Is it? She pulled a folder from her designer handbag and slid it across the table. Perhaps you should review it. I opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside was a prenuptial agreement, dated 2 weeks before Thessaly and Noah's wedding. The signature at the bottom looked like Thessaly's. But it couldn't be. My daughter had told me explicitly there was no prenup. This is a forgery, I said. Can you prove that? Cordelia's voice was silk over steel. Because I can prove it's authentic. I have witnesses who saw her sign it. I have the lawyer who notarized it. Are you really going to drag your daughter through a lengthy legal battle that will cost her everything she has, when she could just walk away now with a small settlement and her dignity intact? Dignity, I repeated. You're talking about dignity while your son cheats on his wife with her own aunt? Cordelia waved a dismissive hand. Young men have their indiscretions. Vivian is a beautiful woman from a good family. These things are complicated. Vivian is from the same family as Thessaly, I said coldly. Oh, please. Cordelia's mask finally slipped, revealing the contempt beneath. Your sister had the good sense to marry well the first time, even if it didn't last. She understands how our world works. Thessaly never did. She was always going to be temporary, Rhiannon. You must have known that. I stared at this woman, this monster in pearls and designer clothes, and I felt a strange calm settle over me. You're right, I said quietly. I did know. I knew from the moment I met your family that you were rotten. All of you. Cordelia's eyes narrowed. Careful, Mrs. Fletcher. Or what? I leaned forward. You'll destroy me? You'll destroy my daughter? You've already done that. But here's what you don't know, Cordelia. You've made enemies far more dangerous than a single mother and her heartbroken daughter. Is that a threat? No. I stood up, leaving the forged prenup on the table. It's a promise. You see, I've spent the last week learning all about your family. About Catherine. About the money Noah has been stealing. About offshore accounts and suspicious deaths and sealed medical records. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across Cordelia's face. "You have no idea what you're talking about," she said, but her voice had lost its certainty. "Don't I?" I picked up my purse. "Enjoy your lunch, Cordelia. Oh, and you might want to check the news in the next few days. I think you'll find it very interesting." I walked out of that restaurant with my head high, leaving Cordelia Holloway sitting alone at that expensive table, her perfect facade finally cracking. I didn't go straight home after leaving the restaurant. Instead, I drove to a small park near the river, parked my car, and sat there for a long time, watching the water flow past. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From adrenaline. From the realization of what I had just set in motion. My phone rang. It was Damaris. "Tell me you didn't threaten her," she said without preamble. "I may have hinted that we know things." "Rhiannon." Damaris's voice was sharp. "That was reckless. You've just put them on alert. They'll start covering their tracks, destroying evidence." "No, they won't," I interrupted. "Because Cordelia Holloway is too arrogant to believe that people like us could actually hurt people like them. She'll dismiss it as the desperate bluffing of a scorned family. She'll go home, pour herself a glass of wine, and laugh about the pathetic nurse who tried to intimidate her." There was a pause. Then Damaris laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You're gambling on her arrogance." "It's not a gamble. I've watched these people for 5 years. I know exactly who they are. I hope you're right, because Booker called me an hour ago. The federal investigation is moving forward. They're convening a grand jury for the embezzlement charges. And there's something else." "What?" "The medical examiner who originally examined Catherine Holloway? He kept copies of his notes. Personal copies. He's been carrying that guilt for 20 years. When Booker's contacts reached out to him, he broke down and gave them everything. Tissue samples, blood work, photographs. All of it pointing to arsenic poisoning. I closed my eyes. So it's real. It's all real. It's real. And Rhiannon, when this breaks, it's going to be massive. Senator Holloway isn't just any politician. He's positioning himself for a presidential run. This will destroy him." "Good," I said and meant it. That night, Thessaly and I packed up the rest of her belongings from the house she'd shared with Noah. He wasn't there, of course. He'd moved in with Vivian 2 days earlier, not even waiting for the divorce to be finalized. As we worked, Thessaly suddenly stopped in the middle of the bedroom, holding a framed photo from her wedding day. In it, she and Noah looked impossibly young and happy, surrounded by white flowers and golden light. "I really loved him, you know," she said softly. "It wasn't just about his family or his money. I genuinely loved who I thought he was." "I know, sweetheart. Do you think he ever loved me? Even a little?" I wanted to lie, to comfort her, but she deserved the truth. "I think he loved the idea of you. The beautiful, accomplished wife who made him look good. But real love? The kind that requires sacrifice and courage? No, I don't think he's capable of that." She nodded slowly and set the photo face down in a box marked Donate. "I'm not going to keep any pictures of him. Is that terrible?" "No, it's healthy." We worked in silence for a while longer, until we heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Vivian's silver Mercedes. "Stay here," I told Thessaly. "Mom, stay here," I repeated more firmly. I went downstairs and opened the front door just as Vivian was reaching for the handle. She looked immaculate as always, her dark hair in perfect waves, wearing an outfit that probably cost more than my car payment. "Rhiannon," she said, and had the audacity to smile. "We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you." "Well, I have something to say to you." She pushed past me into the house, her expensive perfume filling the entryway. "This vendetta you're on, it needs to stop." "Vendetta?" I almost laughed. "Is that what you're calling it? Noah told me about your little threat to Cordelia. Really, Rhiannon, it's embarrassing. You can't actually think you can hurt this family." "I don't think anything, Vivian." "I know." She turned to face me, and for the first time, I saw something like uncertainty in her eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you've hitched your wagon to a sinking ship. Tell me, does Noah know that you're listed as a co-owner on those offshore accounts? Or does he think he's the only one stealing from his father?" The color drained from Vivian's face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do. You've been planning this for over a year. The affair, the embezzlement, the offshore accounts. You were going to wait until the divorce was final, then disappear together with $2 million of Holloway family money. That's insane. You can't prove. Actually, I can. Bank records, emails, wire transfers. It's all documented, Vivian. And it's all going to come out. She took a step toward me, her expression hardening. You have no idea what you're messing with. The Holloways will crush you. They'll destroy Thessaly's reputation, make her unemployable, drag her through. Through what? Thessaly's voice came from the stairs. She descended slowly, her face calm but her eyes blazing. Through the same hell you and Noah have already put me through? Vivian's composure cracked. Thess, you don't understand. This isn't personal. You slept with my husband, Thessaly said, her voice deadly quiet. You planned to steal money and frame me with a forged prenup. You called me and told me I wasn't good enough to keep him. Which part of that isn't personal, Aunt Vivian? I was trying to help you see reality. You never belonged in that world, and you were making yourself miserable trying to fit in. I did you a favor. Get out, Thessaly said. Excuse me? Get out of my house. Each word was precise, final. And Vivian? When the federal agents come to arrest you for financial fraud, don't call me. Don't call Mom. We're done. Vivian looked between us, seeming to realize for the first time that we weren't going to back down. Her face twisted with rage. You're both going to regret this. The Holloways have connections you can't even imagine. The Holloways are going to be too busy with their own problems to worry about us, I said. Now leave, before I call the police and report you for trespassing. She left, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor, slamming the door behind her hard enough to rattle the windows. Thessaly and I stood in the silence she left behind. Then my daughter started to laugh, a slightly hysterical sound that turned into tears. I held her while she cried, not tears of sadness this time, but of relief. Of release. We're really doing this, she said against my shoulder. We're really fighting back. Yes, I said. We are. The news broke 3 days later. It started with a small article in a financial blog. Federal investigation launched into Holloway Investment Group. Within hours, major news outlets picked it up. By evening, it was the lead story on every network. Senator Gerald Holloway's face appeared on every television screen, his usual confident smile replaced by barely concealed panic as reporters shouted questions at him outside his office. Senator, is it true that $2 million is missing from your firm? Did you know your son was embezzling? What about your first wife's death? That last question made him freeze mid-step. The cameras caught it, that moment of recognition that his past had caught up with him. By the next morning, the story had exploded. A former medical examiner had come forward with evidence suggesting Catherine Holloway had been poisoned. The sealed records from 20 years ago were being reopened. Financial forensics teams were descending on Holloway Investment Group. And then came the arrests. Noah was taken into custody first, walked out of Vivian's apartment building in handcuffs while news cameras rolled. The expression on his face was one of complete disbelief, as if he couldn't comprehend that this was actually happening to him. Vivian was arrested 6 hours later at the airport, trying to board a flight to the Cayman Islands with 2 hastily packed suitcases and a briefcase full of cash. But the real shock came on the 3rd day, when federal agents arrived at the Holloway estate with a warrant for Senator Gerald Holloway's arrest on charges of murder in connection with his first wife's death. The footage of him being led away in handcuffs was played on an endless loop across every news channel. This powerful man, who had aspired to the presidency, reduced to a criminal defendant. Cordelia wasn't arrested, but the investigation made it clear she'd known about the murder and had helped cover it up. Her life, her social standing, her carefully constructed world, all of it crumbled in a matter of days. Thessaly and I watched it all unfold from the safety of my small living room. We didn't celebrate. We didn't gloat. We simply sat together, drinking tea, processing the magnitude of what had happened. Do you think Dad would have helped us if I wasn't his daughter? Thessaly asked one evening. I considered the question carefully. I don't know. Maybe. Booker always had a strong sense of justice, even if he didn't have a strong sense of family responsibility. But yes, I think you being his daughter made it personal for him in a way that mattered. He called me yesterday, she admitted. He wants to visit. To try to, I don't know, rebuild something. How do you feel about that? I don't know yet. He left us, Mom. He wasn't there for birthdays or graduations or any of it. But he was there for this. That has to count for something, doesn't it? That's for you to decide, I said gently. I won't tell you how to feel about your father. That's your journey. She nodded, thoughtful. Noah's lawyer called today. They want to settle quickly. No prenup, full division of assets, no fight. And what did you say? A small, satisfied smile crossed her face. I said I'd think about it. Let them sweat a little. I laughed, genuinely laughed, for the first time in weeks. That's my girl. 2 months later, I stood in the same hospital library where I'd spent so many lunch breaks over the years. It was a small, quiet space tucked away on the 3rd floor, overlooked by most staff and patients. Dust motes danced in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the tall windows. I had always found peace here among the books, the gentle silence, the order of things properly arranged. Today, I was reorganizing the medical reference section, a task no one had asked me to do, but one I needed. There was something meditative about restoring order, about putting things in their proper place. As I worked, I thought about how much had changed. The trial had been swift. With the evidence Damaris had compiled and the testimony from the former medical examiner, the case against Senator Gerald Holloway was airtight. He'd been convicted of second-degree murder in Catherine's death and sentenced to 25 years to life. At 63, it was effectively a life sentence. Noah had pleaded guilty to embezzlement and fraud, receiving 8 years in federal prison. His father's defense team had tried to claim Noah was the mastermind behind Catherine's murder too, attempting to shift blame to save the senator, but it hadn't worked. The timeline proved Noah had only been 12 when his mother died, a victim himself, in some ways, though that didn't excuse what he'd become. Vivian had been sentenced to 5 years for her role in the embezzlement scheme. The last I heard, she was in a minimum security facility in upstate New York. She'd tried to write to Thessaly several times, letters full of apologies and excuses. My daughter had returned them all unopened. Cordelia Holloway hadn't been charged criminally, but her life had been destroyed nonetheless. Her social circle had evaporated overnight. The charity boards had quietly removed her name. The country club had revoked her membership. She'd sold the estate at a loss and moved to a small condo in Florida, disappearing from public life entirely. I slid a book on cardiology into its place and moved to the next shelf. The divorce had been finalized 6 weeks ago. Without the forged prenup and with Noah facing criminal charges, Thessaly had gotten everything: the house, the savings, the car, and a substantial settlement. More importantly, she'd gotten her freedom and her self-respect. She'd sold the house immediately. Too many bad memories, she'd explained. Instead, she'd bought a charming 2-bedroom condo near the Arts District, a space that was entirely hers, filled with light and color and possibility. She'd also quit her job at the marketing firm where she'd been undervalued and underpaid for years, and had started her own consulting business. It was risky, but she was thriving. I'd never seen her so confident, so purposeful. "Mom," I turned to find Thessaly standing in the library doorway, carrying a paper bag that smelled like the Italian deli down the street. "I brought lunch," she said, holding up the bag. "Figured you could use a break." "You're supposed to be in a meeting with that new client," I said, checking my watch. "Finished early. They signed on for a 6-month contract." Her smile was radiant. "Turns out people actually value my work when I charge what I'm worth." We sat at one of the small tables by the window, spreading out sandwiches and drinks. For a few minutes, we ate in comfortable silence, watching the city move below us. "I had coffee with Dad yesterday," Thessaly said finally. This was the 4th time she'd met with Booker since everything had happened. He'd flown in from Boston regularly, trying to build a relationship with the daughter he'd abandoned so long ago. "How did it go?" I asked. "It was good, actually. We talked about his work, about my business. About Mom, too." She looked at me carefully. "He asked if there was any chance you two might talk. Not about getting back together," she added quickly. "Just to clear the air. Make peace with the past." I considered this. 25 years ago, Booker's leaving had nearly destroyed me. I'd been angry for so long, bitter about being left to raise Thessaly alone. But that anger had faded over the years, worn smooth by time and perspective. "Maybe someday," I said. "But not yet. I'm glad he's in your life, though. You deserve to have a father." "I already have one parent who's been there for everything that matters," Thessaly said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "Anything else is just a bonus." My eyes stung with unexpected tears. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." She pulled something from her purse, an envelope. "I wanted to show you this. It came this morning." Inside was a letter from a women's advocacy organization. They wanted Thessaly to speak at their annual conference about her experience, about standing up to powerful people who thought they were above the law. "Are you going to do it?" I asked. "I think so. Not for revenge or to embarrass anyone, but because maybe my story can help someone else find the courage to fight back when they're being abused or manipulated. She paused. Is that weird? Wanting something good to come from something so painful? No, I said. That's called resilience. That's called strength. That evening, after my shift ended, I drove to a place I hadn't visited in months. The cemetery where my parents were buried. It was a peaceful spot on a hillside, with old oak trees providing shade and a view of the valley below. I sat on the bench near their graves and told them everything, even though they couldn't hear me. I told them about Thessaly's betrayal, about uncovering the truth, about watching the Holloway's empire crumble. I told them about the woman I'd become, someone who'd discovered she was capable of more than she'd ever imagined. I hope I didn't disappoint you, I said to the headstones. I know you raised me to be kind, to forgive, to turn the other cheek. But sometimes kindness isn't enough. Sometimes you have to fight. The wind rustled through the oak leaves, and I chose to hear it as approval. My phone buzzed. A text from Damaris. Dinner next week? I have a case that could use your particular insight. I smiled. Damaris had been bringing me in as a consultant on some of her cases, situations where her clients needed help uncovering hidden truths. I discovered I had a talent for it, for seeing patterns others missed, for knowing where to look and what questions to ask. It turned out the quiet librarian, the predictable nurse, had hidden depths even she hadn't known about. Another text came through, this one from Thessaly. Movie night at my place tomorrow? I'll make that pasta you like. I replied to both messages with yes, then sat for a few more minutes in the peaceful cemetery, watching the sun begin to set over the valley. 3 months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, I stood at the back of a conference hall, watching Thessaly address a room full of 200 women. She spoke clearly and confidently about her experience, about the warning signs she'd missed, about finding the courage to fight back. My mother taught me something important during all of this, Thessaly said, her voice steady. She taught me that sometimes the people we trust most will betray us, that sometimes the institutions we rely on will fail us. But she also taught me that we're stronger than we think, that we have more power than they want us to believe. The audience was rapt, hanging on every word. When my ex-husband and his family tried to destroy me, they were counting on my silence. They were counting on my shame, my fear, my belief that I was powerless against them. But my mother refused to let me believe that. She showed me that truth is a weapon, and that sometimes the quietest people are the most dangerous when you push them too far. I felt tears on my cheeks and didn't bother to wipe them away. After the speech, women lined up to talk to Thessaly, to thank her, to share their own stories. I watched her listen to each one with genuine compassion, offering encouragement and resources. When the crowd finally thinned, she made her way over to me. You were incredible, I said, pulling her into a hug. I was terrified, she admitted. But then I remembered what you said, that fear is just energy and we get to choose what to do with it. I said that. You did. That night we decided to fight back instead of running away. We walked out of the conference hall together into the golden afternoon light. Thessaly's phone was already buzzing with messages from other organizations wanting her to speak, from women asking for advice, from journalists requesting interviews. This is becoming bigger than I expected, she said, scrolling through the notifications. Are you okay with that? She thought for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, I am. It feels like purpose, you know? Like something good is coming from all that pain. We stopped at a small cafe and ordered coffee, sitting at an outdoor table where we could watch the world go by. Do you ever think about them? Thessaly asked. Noah, Vivian, the Holloways? Sometimes, I admitted. Not with anger anymore. More with a kind of detached curiosity. I wonder if they understand yet. If they've figured out that their downfall wasn't because of us, but because of who they chose to be. Cordelia sent me a letter last week, Thessaly said quietly. Through her lawyer. She wanted me to know she's sorry for how she treated me. That she was wrong. What did you do with it? I read it. Then I filed it away. I'm not ready to forgive her, and I might never be. But I don't want to carry that hatred around either. It's too heavy. I looked at my daughter. No longer the broken, defeated woman who'd shown me those photos months ago, but someone transformed, tempered by fire into something stronger and more beautiful than before. I'm so proud of you, I said. I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. You could have just comforted me and helped me hide. Instead, you taught me to fight. You believed we could win when I'd given up. We're a team, I said simply. We always have been. 6 months after the trials ended, I received an unexpected visitor at the hospital. It was Detective Ron Healy, the retired detective who'd been pressured to close the investigation into Catherine Holloway's death 20 years ago. He was an older man now, in his 70s, with kind eyes and weathered hands. "Miss Fletcher," he said when I met him in the lobby. "I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to talk to you if you have a moment." We found a quiet spot in the hospital cafeteria, and he ordered coffee for both of us with shaking hands. "I wanted to thank you," he said once we were seated, "for what you did, for not letting them get away with it. You're the one who kept the evidence," I pointed out. "Without your notes, we wouldn't have been able to prove anything." "I've carried that guilt for 20 years, he said, his voice rough. "Every day, I thought about Catherine, about how I failed her, about how I let them bully me into closing the case. I told myself I had to protect my daughter, that they would have hurt her if I didn't comply. But the truth is, I was scared. I was a coward. You came forward in the end," I said gently. "That's what matters. It doesn't erase what I did, or didn't do." He looked down at his coffee. "But when I saw that Senator Holloway was convicted, when I knew that Catherine finally got justice, even if it took 2 decades, it was the first night I've slept peacefully since this whole thing started." We sat in silence for a moment. "I want you to know something," he continued. "What you did wasn't just about your daughter, though I know that's what started it. You exposed a pattern of abuse and corruption that went back decades. You stopped them from hurting anyone else. That matters more than you know." After he left, I sat alone in the cafeteria, thinking about his words. He was right. This had started as a mother protecting her daughter, but it had become something larger. We'd dismantled an entire system built on the assumption that wealth and power placed you above consequences. 1 year after everything began, Thessaly and I took a trip together. Not somewhere exotic or expensive, but to a small cabin by a lake in the mountains, a place where we could simply be quiet and breathe. On our last evening there, we sat on the dock as the sun set, our feet dangling in the cool water. The lake was peaceful, nothing like the turbulent waters our lives had been through. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night?" Thessaly asked. "When I showed you those photos, I said a lot of things that night. You said, 'Trust me, sweetheart. We're going to handle this, but not the way they expect.'" She smiled softly. "I had no idea what you meant. I thought maybe you were going to hire a lawyer or help me find a therapist. I never imagined all of this." "Neither did I admitted. "When I called Damaris, when I reached out to your father, I didn't have a master plan. I just knew I couldn't watch them destroy you and do nothing. You know what the strangest part is?" Thessaly drew her knees up to her chest. "I'm happier now than I was when I was married. Even with everything that happened, even with the pain and the betrayal. I'm free. Really free. I'm living a life that's actually mine." I put my arm around her shoulders. "That's all I ever wanted for you. Not wealth or status or the approval of people like the Holloways. Just the freedom to be yourself. I wish I'd understood that sooner. I wasted so many years trying to fit into their world, trying to be someone I wasn't." "You weren't wasting years," I said firmly. "You were learning who you didn't want to be. That's valuable too." We sat together in comfortable silence as the sky turned from gold to pink to deep purple. Stars began to appear, one by one, tiny points of light in the vast darkness. "Mom," Thessaly's voice was soft. "Do you think you'll ever find someone? Fall in love again?" I considered the question. "I don't know. Maybe. But I'm not looking for it. I've learned that I'm complete on my own. Anything else would just be a bonus." "You deserve a bonus," she said. "You deserve someone who sees how incredible you are." "So do you." She laughed. "I'm not ready for that yet. Maybe someday. Right now, I'm dating myself. Learning who I am when I'm not trying to please someone else. That's the wisest thing I've ever heard you say." The next morning, we drove back to the city. As we crossed the bridge into downtown, Thessaly's phone rang. It was the Women's Advocacy Organization again, with another speaking opportunity. While she talked logistics, I thought about everything that had changed. I thought about the quiet nurse I'd been a year ago, the woman who kept her head down and never made waves. That woman still existed inside me, but she'd been joined by someone else. Someone who discovered that silence in the face of injustice wasn't peace, it was surrender. I'd learned that protecting the people we love sometimes means being willing to become someone we never thought we could be. It means finding strength we didn't know we had and using it without apology. The Holloways had taught me that lesson, though not in the way they'd intended. They'd thought their power made them untouchable. They'd believed that people like Thessaly and me were beneath their notice, too insignificant to pose any real threat. They'd been wrong. Not because we were powerful, we weren't. Not because we were wealthy or connected, we were neither. But because we had something they didn't. We had truth on our side, and we were willing to fight for it. When we got back to my apartment, there was a package waiting on the doorstep. Inside was a book, a compilation of stories from women who'd attended Thessaly's speeches, sharing their own experiences of fighting back against abuse and injustice. A note was tucked inside. "Thank you for showing us it's possible. You gave us courage." Thessaly read it and started to cry, the good kind of tears that come from knowing you've made a difference. "We did that," she whispered. "We actually made something good come from all of it." "You did that," I corrected. "You turned your pain into purpose. That's all you, sweetheart." She shook her head. "No, Mom. We're a team, remember? We always have been." That night, after Thessaly went home to her own place, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, thinking about the journey we'd been on. I thought about the woman I'd been before all this, competent, reliable, but fundamentally passive. I'd spent so many years believing that my role was to support others, to stay in the background, to avoid conflict. But when they pushed my daughter into those metaphorical icy waters, when they laughed as she struggled, something fundamental had shifted inside me. I'd discovered that sometimes love isn't gentle. Sometimes it's fierce and uncompromising. Sometimes it requires you to become a warrior, even when you thought you were just a caregiver. I'd learned that justice doesn't always come from the system. Sometimes it comes from ordinary people who refuse to accept injustice, who dig for truth when others want to bury it, who stand up even when they're afraid. Most importantly, I'd learned that we teach our children not just through our words, but through our actions. By fighting back, by refusing to accept defeat, I'd shown Thessaly that she was worth fighting for. That she didn't have to accept cruelty disguised as sophistication, that she had the right to demand better. And in teaching her that lesson, I'd learned it myself. This story concludes where it began, with a question. What would you do if the person you trusted most betrayed you in the cruelest way imaginable? Eleanor's story at the beginning of this channel taught us about quiet strength and calculated justice. But Rhiannon and Thessaly's story teaches us something different. That sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is refuse to be silent. That sometimes love means fighting back. That the quietest among us can become the fiercest when we're defending the people we love. The Holloways believed that wealth and power place them above consequences. They believed that ordinary people like Rhiannon and Thessaly would never have the courage, the resources, or the strength to challenge them. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.